Revelation Tales. Paris, often called the City of Lights, was always seen as a symbol of romance and beauty. But for Sophie Duval, its charming streets, cozy cafes, and stunning monuments were a constant reminder of the lies she had told over the past few months. She sat at a beautifully set table in La Belle Apple, one of Paris' finest restaurants, with her lover, Lucas Bowmont. The smell of delicious food and the soft sound of wineglasses filled the air, but Sophie couldn't shake the anxiety she felt. Sophie, 35, had everything a man could want. She was beautiful, smart, and elegant. She was born and raised in Lyon and moved to Paris in her mid-20s after marrying Alexander Duval, the man she had once deeply loved. Alexander, 3 years older than her, was a famous architect known for his designs that mixed modern and historical styles. Their romance had started quickly. They met at a cafe near the Seine River where Alexander began talking to Sophie about architecture, a passion they both shared. This led to a relationship and then a marriage that looked perfect from the outside. They were seen as Paris's golden couple, successful and admired, living in a beautiful apartment by the river. Their life seemed glamorous with fancy trips to southern France, weekends spent with artists and intellectuals, and grand parties at home filled with Alexander's architectural models. However, beneath the surface, Sophie felt more and more restless. The excitement and passion in their relationship had faded, replaced by a routine life and the stress of maintaining Alexander's career and their flawless public image. That's when Lucas Bowmont came into her life. Lucas was 42, a businessman with a rugged charm that couldn't be contained within the corporate world he inhabited. He exuded a natural magnetism, the kind of man who could walk into a room and command attention without trying. His sharp jawline, piercing blue eyes, and athletic build turned heads wherever he went. A mutual friend had introduced them, and from the moment Lucas kissed her hand, something inside Sophie had ignited. He was different from Alexander in every way, daring, spontaneous, and exciting. Where Alexandra was thoughtful and deliberate, Lucas was reckless and impulsive. Their flirtation began innocently enough. Charming conversation over champagne, playful banter at social events. But it didn't take long for their connection to deepen. Sophie found herself longing for Lucas, yearning for the thrill and unpredictability he brought into her life. One evening, after too much wine and too many stolen glances, their flirtation turned into an affair. The guilt knotted Sophie, but she couldn't help herself. With Lucas, she felt alive as if she had rediscovered a part of herself that had been buried under the weight of her marriage. And so the affair continued. For months, Sophie lived a double life, carefully balancing her role as Alexandra's devoted wife and her passionate escapades with Lucas. She knew it was wrong, but the thrill was intoxicating. Alexandra, ever the workaholic, seemed too distracted to notice, or so she thought. Tonight, as Sophie sat across from Lucas at L'Elle Epoque, something felt different. The evening had started as it always did, playful flirtation over expensive wine and perfectly cooked dishes. Lucas was his usual cheerful self, laughing and chatting about his new business idea. But Sophie felt something was off, though she couldn't put her finger on it. Lucas leaned back in his chair, wearing his usual confident smile. "You're quiet tonight, Sophie. Everything okay?" he asked lightly, touching her hand. Sophie gave him a forced smile. "I'm fine, just thinking, that's all." "About what?" he asked. "Life," she said softly, her voice fading as she looked out the window. The streets of Paris were alive with evening activity. But instead of feeling the usual comfort that the city provided, Sophie felt exposed as though the walls were closing in on her. Lucas raised an eyebrow, but before he could probe further, Sophie's phone, which sat beside her wineglass, buzzed on the table. She glanced at the screen, fully expecting it to be an email or a message from a friend. But the name that flashed across the screen made her blood run cold. It was a message from Alexander. Her fingers trembled as she unlocked the phone, her heart racing. The message was short, but it hit her like a punch to the gut. Enjoy the wine, Sophie. I hope it tastes better than betrayal. The blood drained from her face. Her breath caught in her throat as she read the message again. Disbelief washing over her. How did he know? Her heart pounded, panic rising in her chest. She could feel Lucas's eyes on her, but she couldn't look at him. Everything okay? Lucas asked, his tone shifting from playful to concerned. Sophie quickly turned the phone over, hiding the message from view. She forced a smile, but her mind was racing. It's nothing, she lied, her voice betraying her unease. Lucas didn't press further, but Sophie could tell he wasn't convinced. She tried to pay attention to the conversation. The dinner, anything but the message. But her phone buzzed again, the sound sharp and impossible to ignore in the busy restaurant. She didn't want to check, didn't want to see what Alexander had sent this time. Still, her hand moved on its own, unlocking the phone. Another message appeared. You always said you love French cuisine. I wonder if you'll enjoy it as much when your life falls apart. Look around, Sophie. Do you feel safe? Her throat tightened. She glanced around the restaurant, her eyes scanning the faces of the other diners. Was Alexander here? Was he watching them? The thought sent a shiver down her spine. Lucas noticed her growing distress. Sophie, what's going on? You're acting strange. I need to go, she whispered, her voice barely audible as she pushed her chair back from the table. Lucas frowned, confusion written across his face. What? Why? What's happening? Sophie stood up, her legs unsteady beneath her. She couldn't explain it to Lucas. How could she tell him that her carefully constructed world was crashing down around her? That Alexandra, the man she thought she had fooled, knew everything. But before she could move, her phone buzzed again. She knew she should ignore it, but she couldn't resist the urge to look. The message that greeted her this time made her stomach drop. By the time you return home, I'll be gone. And so will the life you've been living. Consider this your last meal as Mrs. Duval. Beauty. Tears filled Sophie's eyes as the meaning of Alexander's words hit her. He wasn't joking. He knew about the affair and he was leaving her. In that moment, the full weight of her situation overwhelmed her. She had lost Alexander. She had lost everything. Lucas stood up alarmed by her sudden change in demeanor. Sophie, talk to me. What's going on? But Sophie couldn't speak. Her throat was tight, her chest constricted with fear and regret. Without another word, she turned and fled the restaurant, her heels clicking against the marble floor as she pushed her way through the doors and into the cool night air. The streets of Paris were quieter now, the bustling crowds of the evening having thinned out as the night wore on. Sophie walked briskly down the cobblestone streets, her mind a whirlwind of emotions. She couldn't go home. She couldn't face the empty apartment, the reality of what she had done. She had betrayed the man who had given her everything. And now she was left with nothing. She wandered aimlessly through the city, her tears blurring the lights of the street lamps and storefronts. Memories of her life with Alexandra flooded her mind. Their wedding day, the trips they took together, the quiet mornings spent in each other's arms. How had it all gone so wrong? Sophie had always thought she could have it all. She believed she could love Alexandra and have her affair with Lucas without consequence. But now she realized how foolish she had been. She had taken Alexandra's love for granted, assumed he would never find out, never leave her. But now she was alone. The hardest part was knowing she had no one to blame but herself. She stood by the Seine, looking at the dark water reflecting the city's lights. The river, so peaceful, seemed to mock her. Paris had once felt like a fairy tale, but now it felt empty and unforgiving. Her phone buzzed again, breaking the quiet. She hesitated before checking it, her heart sinking as she read Alexander's final message. Goodbye, Sophie. I hope you find what you're looking for. You won't find it with him or in the life you've been living, but I hope one day you'll realize what you've lost. And just like that, it was over. Alexander was gone. Second story. My girlfriend and I recently took a break, but we ended up getting back together sooner than expected. I thought we were going to break up for good because she seemed like she wanted space, but we agreed to a no-contact period to figure things out. During that time, I realized I had been neglecting her and I promised to work on myself and our relationship. Things started improving between us. While we were on a break, I started going to shows with friends and met a girl named Jay. We talked whenever we saw each other at the shows and it seemed friendly. After a couple of weeks, she asked for my number through a friend and we started texting casually. Later, I found out from that same friend that Jay had a crush on me. One night after a show, I gave Jay a ride home since she didn't have one, and we ended up hanging out at a park because she didn't want to go home right away due to personal issues. I made sure to tell her I had a girlfriend, but my friend said she was still interested in me. I eventually called Jay to clarify that nothing could happen between us, and she seemed to understand. After that, I went on a date with my girlfriend, and we ended up getting intimate, which made me feel like we were finally reconnecting. But the next day, I went out to another show and Jay was there again. I tried to keep my distance, but I ended up drinking too much and getting sick. After I recovered a bit, my friends and Jay helped me to my car and that's when things got blurry. At one point, Jay got touchy and eventually kissed me. I pushed her away after a couple of seconds, telling her I couldn't do that. I felt really guilty and confused afterward, even though I didn't want it. A few days later, Jay asked me for a ride home again. I agreed because I felt like she had helped me out when I was drunk and I wanted to return the favor. During the ride, she seemed a bit tipsy and while nothing happened, I felt confused by her smile, her laugh, and the way she looked at me. I felt bad because everything is going well with my girlfriend, but I keep thinking about Jay. I plan to tell my girlfriend about the kiss because I've already mentioned Jay to her before, but I'm confused about what to do next. Should I cut Jay off or just accept that she'll be around when I see my friends? I'd appreciate any advice or thoughts on this situation.